welcome back, everyone. Joining us now is a star and a rock at the North Melbourne Footy Club. Please welcome Todd Goldstein. And Todd, always great to see you, my friend. It's been a while.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I couldn't get a kick for a while, so you guys didn't lost my number.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. When you come on the show like Shea Bolton and that, you get best on the ground and, you start playing really well. So that's why we got you back on the show.
Well, I appreciate I need one of them, so that's good.
Now, you've got a new coach down at the Kangaroos. I'd just like to know, as in charge of the guillotine, I sack all the coaches because these guys don't want to say anything about the coaches, but I do. But what happens with the playing group when you find out? How does it happen for you? Do you do a ring around? Does it come up on Twitter? Do you get a call from the club? What happens with the playing group? Did you know it was coming?
No, we didn't really see it coming. It was sort of, I was just getting ready for the game the night before we played the Bulldogs, and yeah, I think it was Mark Robinson tweeted it out on Twitter, and suddenly Twitter exploded. So we didn't really know what to make of it. And then we had a meeting with Brad as soon as we got to the ground, which was a bit unusual. And that's when we found out exactly what was going on. We didn't want to read too much into the Twitter stuff, but just the amount of traction it got, I think you had a fair idea that it was going to be true.
Hey, Todd, good to see you on the show. You always become a member of Marngrook. You always come on our show, so it's good to see you. Your form this year, you've turned back the clock this year, and I noticed since Bruce has gone out the side, you've sort of taken more of that responsibility, and you've been having a terrific season. Don't sell yourself short. Yeah,
I think it's been pleasing. It helps when the side's starting to play well as well. It brings up everyone. But I think I had great confidence in where my body was at. I feel really fresh still. So I had a good off season. And that was my focus, was to try and find that enjoyment back. And over the last probably 18 months, I've really started to get that.
Todd, what about the fact that when Brad left North Melbourne, there was a talk about maybe they were 3 or 4 years away, had to start again, had to rebuild, therefore he had to get a new coach because he'd been there about 10 years, so 13 years or 14 years, it was going to be too long without, say, winning a flag. But all of a sudden, where have all these young kids come from? Simpkin all of a sudden bounces up and he's best player on the ground. Zurha, bounces out of the blocks and kicks 5 goals. Larkey bobs up and kicks 5 goals playing at centre-half forward. I mean, what's turned it around for those young boys? Yeah,
I think it's amazing once the pressure comes off a little bit. I think it is, as much as you think that you're going all right and things like that, once the media starts talking about will the coach be there still at the end of the year and things like that, the pressure does build. And we lost a few games early. We hadn't quite found our identity yet. So I think it was just about trying to get that confidence back in. And it started with the Bulldogs game when Brad was still coaching us. So that's why I don't think it's the change of coaches changed it. It's just you get that good performance, you get a little bit of positive reinforcement of what you're doing, and that's where it builds from.
Those guys that KB mentioned weren't playing when Brad Scott was the coach, so sure, he's brought them in. All of a sudden, you start to win a few games.
Yeah, I think someone like Jai had a really great pre-season as a midfielder, and then once he come back with Sean Higgins and Ben Cunnington, he didn't really get that opportunity. So since Sean's been injured, Jai has really got a chance to come in and do what he's trained for all pre-season, and no surprise he stood up.
But against the Tigers, Todd, I mean, that game really showed, the quality that North Melbourne had. I mean, Jed Anderson and Zurha and Zeeble that night absolutely brutalised the Tigers. Just with their physicality.
We got back to the sort of footy we were playing last year, and that's what gave us confidence last year, was we started to hit teams really hard, and at least teams walked off the field knowing that they'd played a tough physical game, and that's sort of the identity we've been working towards. And I think it started under Brad. I think we had started to turn that cog a few weeks earlier. It just took a couple of weeks to get going, and Richmond was probably a good example of that.
Hey Todd, I was up at the Swans with Shorey, and so I kind of know the type of guy he is behind the scenes and what a people person he is. Can you just explain to everyone back home how good he is at galvanising a group and making sure that he gets around to all the players from 1 on the list to 45 on the list, and really bringing a team together, because it's always a tough time when a coach gets the guillotine, as you'd say, Grant.
Yeah, it's just incredible. Like, sure, he's only been here for since December last year, so he hasn't had a lot of time to get to know everyone, but he already feels like he's part of the furniture. He makes sure he gets the loss across to every single player. He has a joke. He knows all of us in depth now, I think, and it's like he's been in the job for a month pretty much, and he really cares, and he asks about how your family's going, and it's that little connection that he has with every single player, and I think it's hard to not find that really encouraging and find that exciting to be part of.
Now, what about the game on the weekend? You had the game in the palm of your hands. 30 seconds to go, and that would have hurt, I imagine.
He doesn't want to talk about it.
I was really hoping we could focus on this week rather than last week.
Yeah.
We've sort of done our reviews already. But yeah, I mean, it was obviously a disappointing result, but I think hopefully in the long run it will help us. We learned a lot about the way we react and what we did from a coaching standpoint and also from a player's standpoint in that last 2 minutes. And unfortunately we had to sit down and watch the last 2 or 3 minutes, and I think we learned a lot from that.